With this segment, we are recording this, to be clear, on the 11th of December. So the Spurs game has just happened. We've got a couple of games left of the year. So drastic things could change either way. But we wanted to look ahead broadly to the year of 2025 at Chelsea Football Club and to kind of guess or predict, look ahead and theorise what could be some of the big things to happen at Stamford Bridge in 2025. I feel like the first thing, Jan, is a name you mentioned in our previous segment. Estevao Willian is kind of one of the biggest names I hear on a frequent basis. Whenever I ask for questions for my show, I at least get one question about him and what could be coming down the line with him. He's had an incredible time at Palmeiras recently. In terms of a prediction, in terms of what you're thinking about him, how do you think about him when he's going to finally arrive at Chelsea after it feels like ages and ages of hype?
Yeah, so also, like, I was thinking about this, right? There's two teenage wonder kids that are being the most spoken about in world football. And when you say two, you'll be thinking, well, they're both got to be playing in Europe. So obviously one's Lamine Yamal, European, much to our dismay, European Euros winner. But the other guy's Estevao Willian. You know, it's not Kendry Paez, who's gone off the boil a little bit, but was doing bits for Ecuador and still was high profile. Maybe a few concerns have come up about him, but he's still an exciting acquisition. Andrey, of course, a player that we courted for a long time. He can't get a sniff at Real Madrid, despite being more probably of a centre forward than Kylian Mbappe is. I'm not suggesting he should start over him, but that's how things have panned out for him. It's Estevao, and it's Estevao because he has blown apart Neymar's record for goal involvements as a U18 in the Brazilian league. I think he won Best Young Player and Best Attacker in the league awards, and I think the best attacker is just like senior attackers as well. Which correct me if I'm wrong, either yourself or in the comments or whatever. But certainly I've seen him holding a lot of ruddy trophies lately. Do you know what I mean? And he seems to hold himself well. He's not shy. He scored that amazing free kick. They finished second in the end, but to keep them in the title race, he scored an absolute worldy free kick. Imagine turning to this like fetus on the pitch, this child, to be like, score an absolute superstar Galactico free kick and keep this, this man's team in a top flight title race. This is the kind of kid we are dealing with. Absolute massive hype. I do feel a little bit like I'm very excited, like everyone else, understandably, and everyone who talks about him, people that know much more about South American football than I do, and the individuals, the hype is real, but integration is just a huge thing. Obviously, Kendry Paez has had the opportunity to come to Cobham a couple of times. He's trained with the first team. He's watched games at Stamford Bridge. We've been really intelligent with integration. We've been really good with players like Andrey Santos as well. They seem to be quite, another thing you need, I'm quickly put a pin in that. I'll come back in 20 seconds. The young players, how they're being looked after is actually quite positive. And like you mentioned in the previous segment that we filmed before that about, Neil Bath and the academy turnover, and quite rightly great criticism, but they seem to have made intelligent hires, and they seem to be like, as brutal as a lot of this stuff has been, they are still bringing in best in class, and they look like, because they want to get in so much young talent, that they're going to appropriately and intelligently look after them and integrate them, and especially kids from other side of the world, different cultures. So I do feel comforted that we will do that with Estevao. He is learning English. He's already speaking to Reece James, Cole Palmer, doing a celebration after scoring goals. He's spoken to Thiago Silva, who, as we will not be shocked to hear, has been giving glowing reviews about Chelsea, of course, Brazilian legend to Brazilian wonder kid. But despite all that, I still have concerns. Is this kid in 12 months' time in the January transfer window going to be going to Strasbourg for a bit? Not because of his talent, but like, how is this going to work, sort of thing,
No, I've consistently, to people's annoyance, tried to bring caution, mainly because of his age. And it's not like we bought even a European-based player. We've bought someone from South America who is going to move to a whole different country, a whole different part of the world, a whole different culture, a whole different climate. I mean, we're recording this in winter. when it's, it gets pretty brutal during the winter, and that's something he probably has never experienced before in his life. It's small things like that. It's things off the pitch that culturally and also the age of him is just, he's so ridiculously young that I agree with you that I hope that the management and integration of him is carefully looked after, because he could be a generational talent, and I don't use generational like flippantly. I hate using that word flippantly because I think it has been overused, but he could be that, but you want to nurture it to a point where he can walk into that environment and slowly but surely become a first teamer. And my only concern is that he's had so much hype in the social media age. I mean, we probably wouldn't have had this 10 years ago, even when social media was still around, but nowadays it's even more so because there's so much interest in him. My one concern is that he comes in and he's suddenly competing with older players, better players, where he isn't looked upon to be the big guy, and he maybe is struggling with the physicality of the Premier League, and then you get a quick wave of criticism that he isn't as good as sold. And I'm not going to be participating in that, because there needs to be, I think, some appreciation that he isn't going to... Well, if he comes in and does a Cole Palmer, then listen, happy days. But if he doesn't, I want there to be at least a safeguarding at the club to try and keep him on a good play, where he isn't ending up at Strasbourg by 2026.
So on that as well. Firstly, like, the Cole Palmer's one of a kind in terms of like personality type. I don't think he's got. I never want to call. I think Cole Palmer's a genius on the pitch. I actually think he's quite sharp in other ways, but there's an element of his reserved nature that's quite simple, and I mean that affectionately, right? That served him really well. We are being serious about the Strasbourg concern, but why are we being serious about that? Because of the hype. Because of the hype of the player, not the talent. Now, the best example would be Andrey Santos, right? He too came from South America, a very highly rated player. Remember, we wanted to bring him in the Potter January. Thank the heavens we didn't enter that chaos, because he had visa issues, didn't he? And then he came after the summer. And in the summer, he captained the Brazil U20 team to championship glory. He wore the captain's armband. I believe he was the top goal scorer from central midfield, like not attacking midfield, central midfield. And that did him a lot of good, obviously. And then he helped him with his visa issues. And then he came to Chelsea. And then we decided, I think he went on the bad loan, didn't he? Did he go to Forest? It went on like a bad 6 months loan.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really... I think he barely had any appearances.
Yeah, so Forest was bad. Steve Cooper, and it was all bad, right? But actually, 18 months at Strasbourg, he could be... I know there's still criticisms about Strasbourg, how they're doing, but for him as an individual, actually, the 18 months at Strasbourg might be a really positive reflection on his development in Europe, and because he's a killer out there. He's scoring loads of goals, he's winning man of the matches. I think he might have even worn the armband in a game. I think Liam Rossinier, I can't say his surname, I think he gave
Liam
Rossinier, thank you. He gave him the captain's armband for a game, and I actually think the big success story so far for Chelsea Blue Coat's involvement, it is actually Andrey Santos. So I know we're bantering Estevao going there, and I'm not saying he should go there, because I don't think he should, purely because he's this global hype man, and he's like almost like not allowed to go there now. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's like has to work, even though I don't think it was a huge investment. But Andrey Santos is going to come back to Chelsea, and he's gonna be a good squad player. You know, he's going to be like, say next season we're in the Champions League and we haven't got a B team anymore, because you can't do that. You've got to have consistency with an extended first team. They've got to be conditioned. By the way, when you and I were talking about how Chelsea has changed, we didn't even talk about the injuries from last season to this season, which was...
Oh yeah, that's
equally, that could have been for the shock, you know, as well. Like how much of an improvement and development we've seen positively with that. But, you know, Andrey Santos, by the time he comes to... was he 20 now? He was 18 when we signed him, or, you know, and now he might be 20, 21. He'll be like oven cooked to play in the Chelsea midfield, and I think he'll be, you know, a sort of Lavia, Caicedo sort of type of player. He loves a goal, you know, from deep positions as well, which I think Maresca really, really like, and that is thanks to, probably in hindsight, being 2020, 18 good months at Strasbourg, you know, learning a bit of French, learning more English, European football, learning about different sort of struggles, being appreciated, being a bit of a star, you know, and then being more ready to be like, right, I'm Chelsea, mate. I'm Chelsea. I've done really good in Brazil. I've won really good youth level. I've had a Brazilian call up, and again, he could be a great ally to Estevao in the dressing room, but he was dealt with quite well as well. I think ultimately, even if there was reservations of another loan, it just, for me, it seems like it's been a good move. And actually, he'll come back. We're not going to recall him next month, by all accounts, because it's going well over there. And then come the summer, when everyone's there, I think he'll represent a good thing. But I think with Estevao, to bring it back, because this is what we're talking about here, I think purely because of this this global hype, this global thing, just the optics of him going to Strasbourg for a bit to play some European football would just be such a negative headline maker. But again, like from the previous segment of us discussing about how integration and keeping the camp happy, and fortunately in the Premier League and we live in a time of 5 substitutions per match. Often it's attackers that get sub minutes. There will still be cups. There'll still be league games in the Champions League. Again, touch wood, we're in the Champions League. The league phase means you'll play a lot of opposition that you're not necessarily going to be in a group where I think there's not as much pressure. There'll be games where you could go away and you rotate and play these kind of players. And I feel like we'll be settled enough, and we know Maresca can deal with young players, that whether he's being a deputy for Cole Palmer, because I think he could be an amazing deputy for Cole Palmer, like in understudy, and who knows, they both get on the pitch at the same time. One plays right wing, one plays right pocket. That could happen, but he can rotate in the right pocket, right wing. I actually am quite a big fan of Joao Felix. I know he's a bit of a luxury, peculiar signing ultimately, but I quite like him as a player. He can play as a sort of more inverting left winger quite well, and as well as in behind. I actually think he can play as a false 9 better than Nkunku. That's my personal opinion, because Nkunku's still super direct, but he can play as a sort of Firmino false 9, I think, Joao Felix, but that's perhaps another conversation. But I think there's room there. I think there'll be casualties. There'll be, I know he's got the streets, but Carney Chukwuemeka will be a casualty. I think Dewsbury Hall is going to be a weird one we'll look back on. I think there's conspiracy talks that £30 million purchase had links to the Maresca thing, shadows of Maurizio Sarri and Jorginho inflated transfer fee. Do you know what I mean? Maybe something, I don't, that allegedly or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's maybe a bit of that. I think these guys, Cesare Cassidy will go, and Santos will come in, and I think the squad will just get better. And I think there's so much tactical flexibility. And Estevao himself, he wants to play a bit more free, but he can play right wing, he can play inside pocket. He'll get a chance. If he's good, if he's listened, if he's a professional. We'll see him do bits, I think. And ultimately, look, man, if we want to be the best, we want to be a team that can compete in the Champions League and the Premier League. And if we, 6 months into next campaign, he's integrated, there could be games where Cole Palmer and Estevao Willian are starting games together, and opposition are like, who the hell are we going to mark here? Do you know what I mean? And I'll tell you what, not only will that be a good place to be in, Chelsea have had some amazing players before, like, everyone's saying Zola, Hazard, but that this could be a situation where we've got 2 of those players on the pitch at once, and that is unprecedented. So that's like Real Madrid stuff. Do you know what I mean? That's not even like Premier League stuff. So
yeah, I mean, as we're seeing with Real Madrid currently, there is some awkwardness to that, right? Like, I think everyone was kind of very fearful when Mbappe joined that they would have instantly this unbeatable, unmatched attack, and it may still develop into that. It kind of feels a little bit more like PSG at the moment, where he's
old
kind
school
of
PSG of 2 years ago. But that's culture as well, Dan. So sorry to interrupt me, but that's culture as well. Like, and we're talking about, for example, these semi-luxury players. Like Joao Felix he still played for Sim. I'm not saying he's going to be starting for Chelsea anytime soon. I don't think he is a starter. But as an example, as a flair player, he still was a Simeone player that, remember his first game against Fulham, he got a red card because he's not going to shy away. He's going to get in. And actually, Cole Palmer is one of the most intelligent pressers of the football ever. He's not just this guy that's just going to stand where he wants. He's I think the guy behind me, Eden Hazard, I think he's the most gifted player to ever play for Chelsea. Even now, even like, ask me again in 3 years. But Hazard wasn't like an intelligent presser. He was just poetry on the football pitch. Cole Palmer's intelligent at pressing. I can't comment on Estevao, but if you can drill him, then it won't be necessarily this like Real Madrid situation or PSG of 2 years ago. You could still say, like, you guys were both amazing. You could be on the pitch together, do this, and it will make it happen. It could be novel. It could be great. But again, I'm just immediately going back into this insane hype train that we're allowed to get excited. Of course we are, but we just don't know.
So we've looked at kind of Estevao and Andrey Santos, and obviously you add on to that Paez. Obviously, there's going to be some casualties, or there at least should be, I think, in the attack, because I was asked this question and I started looking at the reality that Jadon Sancho, I mean, Chelsea are probably not finishing below 14th in the Premier League table right now, so he will become a permanent signing. You've just mentioned Joao Felix, Pedro Neto, Noni Madueke, Cole Palmer. I think I've got everyone there.
Mudryk.
Well, the two players I was going to mention who could be casualties, or at least could be players that in 2025 are no longer at Chelsea, is Mykhailo Mudryk and Christopher Nkunku. I feel like those are the two names at the moment that Mudryk, for the fact that because of the combination of those new players coming in, but also just I'm not quite sure he's ever going to be good enough, and Maresca doesn't need to really use him. So like he's got other options. So he can have his nice Conference League minutes, but I think Maresca kind of showed very quickly that in terms of when it comes to the serious games, I don't think he's looking at Mykhailo Mudryk. I think he's looking at other players. So I think there's that. And also you have to kind of make space if Estevao is going to start to get some serious minutes. But then also with Nkunku, I just think the guy's too good to be a B team player. Like he will just look at it and go, I didn't sign up to be an understudy. I signed up to be the star guy, and look at my goal tally.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give you comments on both of those, but I'll also add Joao Felix into that as well. Like I remember we signed Joao Felix because the Samu deal broke down, and it was an accounting thing, and Joao loved being at Chelsea. He was willing to reduce his wages. We got a great deal on in terms of a profile marketable asset. This guy's got millions and millions of followers. Do you know what I mean? And like comparative, I know we love Conor Gallagher, but from like a brand awareness thing, they looked at it from a business perspective. But this is a business perspective. Now, I like Joao Felix. I think he's a really cool player, and I feel like he's in this state of mind where he just wants a home now. Atletico, massive move, probably wasn't the right move for him. Barcelona, still probably not right. He feels at home at Chelsea. He's just turned 25. You hear him speaking. He did a press conference like a couple of months ago. He's like, I'm going to be a Chelsea starter. He's like, I believe I'm really, really good, and I'm fine waiting. I'm going to work hard and do it. Great. If it happens, I'd love it. Love to see it. Do you know what I mean? He's a bit of an artist. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. And that's because although he can play on this left wing style, we know the wingers that Maresca likes. He likes the top three wingers we've got. Noni Madueke, even though he's trying to challenge him to become this player who he thinks he can be. He loves Jadon Sancho, and he likes Neto, who's probably a little bit faster than both of them, but can still do what Maresca wants, which he wants 1v1 wingers. He wants guys who can take on their man.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's got everything else sorted, and he's got wants everyone to take on their man, which I'll finish on Mudryk, which leads me on to Nkunku. Because of all the tactical flexibility, filling in pockets, inverting, there is some fundamental stuff. Wingers, 1v1s, man beaters, and the striker has to be really intelligent at pressing, which Nkunku might be, he's very fast, but he still needs to be a centre forward. My cat just jumped on the speaker. He still needs to be a centre forward. So why do you think we're looking at Osimhen, John Duran, Samu Moradian? Do you know what I mean? These are strikers to help Jackson. Okay, so Nkunku just simply isn't a centre forward. You're right to praise him. He's probably the best finisher, and I include Cole Palmer in that. But Cole Palmer's got it all. He's a playmaker. He's a friggin' everything. He's he's dribbler, ball carrier, goal scorer, creator, whatever, best player. But
great talker.
Yeah.
Really inspirational talker.
But genuinely, it's a meme. It's a theme. It's a brand expansion. It's brand Parma. He's a little bit, everyone loves it. They can't get enough of it. Chelsea love that. Trust me. They're like, oh, everyone's excited about Parma's, the way he talks. They're loving it, and it's not rude like Haaland. It's just funny. So we know that's sort of like we want a centre forward, right? And he's not a centre forward. He's not a winger. He's not the kind of number 10 that we want as a playmaker. He's super direct, bro. So I actually think he's the best finisher. Like, he can do all kinds of finishes. He will lash it hard. He will try overhead kicks. He'll do glancing headers despite not being that tall. He'll do poacher's finish. He's a sniffer in the box. I think he's the best like goal scorer, but there's a touch of the Kai Havertz about him. He's a more prolific. He's an infinitely more prolific player than Kai Havertz. But Kai Havertz, I'm not a hater. I quite admire him as a player. He's often a problem to be solved, basically. And you're right to say he's not going to be happy. I mean, I think he's okay. He's Chelsea's top scorer. He'll do the balloon celebration in the Prem. I reckon if he scored a hat-trick in the conference, he'll still do a balloon celebration. You know what I mean? If he scores in the final and we win, he'll do the balloon celebration. He'll take the MVP of the competition award. He'll take the top scorer of the competition award, and he'll be like, yeah, good, but let's move on now. But the truth is, he's older than everyone else. He's 27. He's like, now he wants to hold down that starting spot for France. Whether it's just playing off Kylian Mbappe and Ousmane Dembele. He's like, yeah, I need to be that guy now because I'm like in the sweet spot, 27. Whereas, the aforementioned Joao, he's a couple years younger, a bit more, and he can probably wait a little bit longer to get there. Do you know what I mean? So, like you, I think as much as I love Nkunku, I was so excited when we signed him to the point where I got criticism of like this Leipzig guy, but I've seen him, his quality of finishing, his metrics, his elite, I think he's a cool player. I think he'll be an asset, a really highly valuable asset that will make book value profit on, even if we don't make transfer profit. I think he'll be there. And then finally, to speak on Mudryk, I know we could do friggin' entire podcasts on Mudryk. I don't know if I've spoken to you about it. I've certainly referenced it on my channel a few times. Adam Crafton did a great research piece on Mudryk when Arsenal were going to sign him, right? And he was being reflected as this severely undercoached player because at Shakhtar, remember, because of the war in Ukraine, all the Brazilian players were entitled to void their contracts. Understandably, the country was at war, so they all got to rip up their contracts and leave. Naturally and unsurprisingly, the Ukrainian players stayed, and he was the wonder kid. But he was the wonder kid because he was insanely fast. He was insanely fast at carrying the ball, not just running the channel in behind. And he had an absolute hammer of a shot on him. And he had these brilliant instinctive moments with the ball, like dribbling and little moments. And remember, again, Ukrainian league, Shakhtar, competition level. Do you know what I mean? So it was very much play the ball in the left channel and let like Superman run into it. That is not enough for any Premier League team. Southampton, it's not enough. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not enough for any. If you're going to operate in the Premier League in this landscape, you just need to be drilled with intelligence, pressing, space occupation. The ability to obtain fast chemistry with your teammates. He just doesn't have any of that. Any of it. Like, he's so severely undercoached, like dramatically, to the point where, Pochettino was tasked to like sort them out a little bit. He was doing the crossbar challenge with him. He's putting his arm around him. But I think Chelsea might just say he's just too far behind. Like we're too far ahead of schedule to the point where we need to just rock with this and keep up with our own momentum. We can't be like nursing this project anymore. The player himself is potentially incredible. I'm not one of these people that thinks he's bad. No, I think he's incredible. And we've seen moments of instinct. Remember the goal last season where he nicked the ball off Gallagher? Gallagher's like getting his head up with his foot on the ball. It's literally whipped out of his feet. Mudryk dribbles past three people, rounds the keeper and puts it in the corner. And you think, what the heck was that? This moment of brilliant instinct. That wasn't just Mudryk running really fast down the left channel. He was like, I think he was playing in number 10 under Poch, which is not something we'd entertain now for a multitude of reasons, but he just had this moment of like la 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 la, I'm amazing, bang, and it was this like super clip moment. And of course, like, he is very fast in the left channel. He can be utilized to just spread the play. The ball won't see him much. It will see Palmer and Noni on the right hand side. He'll just, people will have to think of him because he'll be like a sort of almost Victor Moses wingback style player that you just need to think he's there and be, wary of him. But that's nowhere near good enough in terms of his ceiling and his cost. I think he could be a great player, and I feel like that's probably not at Chelsea, and it probably needs to be a style of football that suits him better. B, a new opportunity for him to reassess his own standing in the team and profile and stuff. And there's just a lot. Personally, I feel like there's too much. Of course, he's had to deal with all the horrendous, abhorrent stuff in his own country. That was where he came from, is really badly affected in the conflict. He's very. I think he is a bit shy, and he's not the kind of gregarious character that just integrates with all the boys. Cobb and banter. And I wonder if a different European club, like not even in England, would suit him. I do think maybe if he just went to Brentford and they spent all their time at Brentford coaching him on this transitional play, left channel, and Burmo's going to play you in, you run, that he could be a devastatingly worrying opposition in the Prem. But, Brentford ain't going to pay the money for it. I'm pulling Brentford out my backside here, but I just feel like Chelsea, the way we play, what we expect for our players, it does seem... I can't see it happening personally. I've got nothing against it working out. I've got to say that now for your watchers. I've got nothing against it working out. It'd be great if it works out. Great, happy for that. I've got nothing against any Chelsea player. But I do wonder for his own... And also, just to finish on, I do wonder if there was a touch of geopolitical element to his signing. Of course, he was one of the new big signings under the new ownership. They completely cleaned the deck of everything Roman, Russian, and they aren't Roman Abramovich. We've just signed the Ukrainian wonder kid, and we've sent him out in the middle of Stamford Bridge with a Ukrainian flag on his back with loads of cameras. I do wonder if there was a little bit of that as well. But it's a sort of semi-cynical. I don't know if that's the word, but I don't know if that's the case.
No, I there is absolutely that part of it, because they, what other player walks out onto the pitch with their national flag? That's a very deliberate act. I don't think Mudryk would have. I mean, maybe he did, but I don't think Mudryk would have brought his own Ukrainian flag that day. I think that was clearly something that marketing.
It's like Messi with the Qatar, not the Qatar wear on him and all that kind of stuff, and all that kind of the optics.
Yeah, and I hate to do the I told you so, but I distinctly remember the morning of that Palace game when he got unveiled as a new Chelsea player. I remember making a show in reaction to the signing, because it happened very quickly, because it looked like Arsenal were going to sign him. And I remember saying that I just don't think this is a good idea, because mainly I was referring at that present time to the Potter vibe and everything feeling like a bit of a mess. But I think, if I remember rightly, my biggest concern for him was, as you've referenced, and I think it's become clear since he signed for Chelsea how undercooked he is coaching wise, that he really needed to move to a club that would have given him that time, and he wouldn't have been under such international scrutiny, which you get at a club like Chelsea. I look at him and I think, if you'd gone to an Ajax, if you'd gone to even like a Borussia Dortmund, maybe it could have worked out for you a lot better. I mean, even a Brighton, right? Like it could have worked out for him in a very different case, where he could have been able to develop and nurture, and there isn't that media scrutiny on you.
Can I ask you a question though on that? Because I agree. But can I just throw back a question? So Arsenal would have had media scrutiny, big club, same. But do you think, because of those first crucial months, and you look at the chaos at Chelsea and the calming, regimented atmosphere of Arsenal, do you think he would have done better at Arsenal, or do you think he wouldn't have, because they would have just demanded this functionality out of him that he didn't have? I feel that's an interesting question.
I think narratively it wouldn't have mattered as much, because they are a very good team, and at the time they were competing for a Premier League title, and maybe as a cameo role he would have been able to kind of blend into the background a
Yeah.
little bit. And, narrative wise and perception wise, the conversation around him wouldn't be the same. However, I'm a big believer that, this is Michael Owen analysis, but fundamentally flawed players are fundamentally flawed players. Like, there would have become a point where, and I think you're seeing it at Arsenal with a player like Kai Havertz. Like, I think there are limitations to certain players that over a period of time get exposed the more they go into the light. And I think the Mudryk case is just like whether it was bravado from Igbali, that he maybe wanted to get one over on Arsenal. I've heard that rumoured before, and that doesn't really surprise me. There was a whole marketing thing. Like, if you remember, weirdly, there was some weird social media stuff around the way Chelsea's admin was working at the time that I've not seen for any other transfer, where we were effectively like putting up comp clips of him before we'd even officially announced him as a Chelsea player. So it was a weird transfer. And I think in some ways Nkunku's similar, not in terms of the quality of player, but it feels like a classic Chelsea problem of instinctive buying, not appreciating the changes that could be made at your club over the next 18 months.
I'd probably contest that a little bit with Nkunku. Purely because, firstly, I agree with the bravado thing on Igbali. I think it's worth bringing up. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Well, not a bad thing. I don't think Chelsea fans would perceive that as bad down the road when we're better, because that's like Roman Abramovich all over. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want him, we're better than you, we're just going to take him away from you. That's quite a Chelsea thing to do. But like, maybe once you're good, once you've almost earned the right to behave like that, if that makes sense. But now, like you say, you're right. Future planning, sporting directors, conceptual ideas, road mapping, you don't do that, essentially. That's kind of what we're moving away from holistically. But I'd sort of contest the Nkunku thing, because he was seen as this direct finisher of chances that would be, instead of like a Kai Havertz, more direct, more, because he had such, and he does have such elite finishing. It's like there's an element of Kai Havertz was a bit floaty, a little bit like this. Like, how do you make this guy luxury? I don't think Nkunku is a luxury player, and I don't think he's undercooked. I don't think he's a luxury player like Havertz, and I don't think he's undercooked like Mudryk. I just think we've landed. And remember, the pre-season under Pochettino, the whole attack was built around Nkunku. That was the plan. Yeah. It was only because Cole Palmer just became friggin' Super Saiyan that the narrative changed. But we were cooking that pre-season with Nkunku like linking up with Jackson, doing flicks and stuff, and playing as a sort of second striker, number 10. That's how you play Nkunku. So I don't think there was an issue there, and he is just an elite finisher of chances that. So my cat's moving around. I feel like it's a bit different, and we've kind of wound up with him as a casualty. But I think it's different situations with your Kai Havertz.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that I'm a big believer that I think Nkunku is a level raiser player. It's more just the awkwardness of the situation he finds 100%. Himself in, where I think he's good enough to start for a top
for
team.
A Champions League team. He should be like one of the star of a European Champions League team, basically. That's what we're talking about,
Yeah. No, the factor is like it's difficult at Chelsea because Jackson's playing well. He's scoring goals. It's not just that he scores goals. I think off the ball, he's a very integral player to the way Chelsea work and press. We talk about pressing, right? And that's very important in the modern game. And arguably, that's probably Nkunku's biggest weakness is his pressing off the ball. And then you've got the litany of other attackers who've done well. So I don't. It's not so much that why aren't we playing this guy? It's not like we were in Nkunku joined during the Werner and Ziyech and Havertz era, and Tuchel's just not playing this guy who's obviously scoring goals. We're dealing with an attack that is productive. So he's just found himself in this situation. It's just trying to think about, well, he was signed when Vival was still at the club for that very short period of time, and Bowley was still interim sporting director. He was signed a very long time ago, and it's kind of a bit like, I don't think that's a situation that will just continue unless something radically changes. Chelsea's attack drastically weakens, and I don't know, we sell some players. Some players get drastically, injured, and then suddenly a window opens up where Nkunku becomes the guy. But listen, they're not on the same planet for me in terms of technique and in terms of
They're just
productivity.
profiles completely different.
Like Mudryk for me is I think he is a poor player. I don't, and it was put to me once that, well, if we give Mudryk enough time, he might be as good as Timo Werner one day. And I just thought, well, if that is the ceiling for Mykhailo Mudryk, we might as well just call it quits now. Because I'm sorry, I don't want to watch Werner again at Chelsea. I had enough of that.
While I agree with you, I feel like there's glimpses of Mudryk. I mean, you're ultimately how good a player you are will result in an aggregation of how well you do on the pitch all the time, right? So you're right to just do that. But there's these glances of what Mudryk does, like, his debut at Anfield, everyone was terrified of him. He's and
then we realised it was really just James Milner.
but
there's probably the more.
But there's these moments like the Conor Gallagher instinctive goal. He scored a couple of lovely goals, but it's few and far between. Because even if he did that more often, you're still he then would become a luxury player. Do you know what I mean? He's not at luxury player status, which in itself is a problem. Do you know what I mean? So he's like an uncoached, not quite consistent enough to be a luxury player. Like if he was doing that, like instinctive finishes all the time and dribbling around people and, absolutely roasting fast right backs on the break and getting 5 yards away from them and doing a cutback to one of our players on the regs, you go, all right there. But even that isn't what our coach wants. So you talk about profiling issues with Nkunku. He's not a striker. He's not a Maresca striker. He's not a Maresca number 10. There's no second striker. Nkunku would have been amazing in a 2015 Pochettino Tottenham team. He would have been like that supercharged Dele Alli. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of role that doesn't really exist anymore, And I'm not saying he can't play elsewhere. There'll be a team that plays some sort of variation of a 4-2-2 or of a lopsided 4-2-3-1 where Nkunku can play in that half space off a striker, off a big man, and be devastating. Be devastating for a team that could beat Chelsea comfortably. There's a world that exists but in this, what we've said, we've spoken at length in the first part of what we're recording about the future planning, feeling safe, and understanding the process, the project, the systemic philosophy. He's just not a natural fit. So it's a very different problem to Mudryk. He's a great player, Nkunku. And again, I ain't got a problem. If Mudryk comes good, great. If any Chelsea player comes good, great.
Yeah.
But we are in a very privileged position now, Dan, to be very excited about high performing forwards and ones that are yet to arrive. So I think if they were both to go, maybe not January, but planned good target destinations, good transfers in the summer, lots of people will be sad to see Nkunku go. But if they bring in high-profile striker to challenge Jackson, and we've got the wingers and Estevao, people I think would move on very quickly.
Yeah, especially if the productivity of the attack continues. So hopefully that'll be the case heading into 2025. But thank you so much, Jan, for joining me today. Great conversation. Pleasure. As I do with all my guests, just a chance for people to find your work, shout out where people can find it as we head towards 2025.
Yeah, man. So Football Therapy on YouTube. I do have a second channel that I'm trying to push, Football Yannick, which is incidentally is the same as my Instagram handle, Football Yannick, where I talk non-Chelsea stuff as well, if you'd be interested in that. So Football Yannick as a handle.
Definitely go and check out Jan's work across the socials. He's been a great guest. I think I lose track of the years now. I think we've had multiple conversations about Chelsea throughout different eras. So definitely links in the description box below. Go and check out and support Jan's work in the Chelsea community. But thank you guys so much for watching, for listening. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea. Have a great end to 2024 into 2025, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.